Okay, call the meeting to order, roll call.
Beachside Redevelopment Board, meeting on Wednesday, September 15th. Robert Ellis,
Present.
Tony Servants, Teresa Doan. Here. Krista Goodrich. Gary Libby.
Here.
Mr. Dino Paspalek.
Here. Okay, everybody's received a copy of the, we have two different meetings, two different minutes, so let's start with the May 12th meeting. Has everybody received a copy of it? And do I hear a motion for approval of the May 12th meeting?
Let's see if there are any corrections. I've got some factual challenges with some of the testimony, but I think we need to accept it and then look at in the future whether or not it needs to be corrected.
The button.
I've got some factual challenges with some of the information as reported, really critical ones, but I think the way to do this from my previous experience would be to go ahead and pass this, but note in the future when we do have an opportunity to discuss a couple of very critical issues that are reflected in these minutes that have proven to be not the whole truth, and will affect our ability to move forward, we can then do it. So I'll move that we accept the set of minutes from two meetings ago?
Yes, the May 12th meeting. Okay, is there a second for the May 12th?
I'll second.
Okay, all in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Okay, now the July 14th meeting. Is there a motion for approval? Robert, you want to give them a motion?
I'll motion to approve.
Okay, is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Okay,
You didn't ask for any of us who opposed it.
okay.
Yeah, I oppose both sets of minutes.
Okay, no problem. All right, next, before we get to the next item, I do see that we have a police officer here, and it's customary to allow him to make the report before we move on to items on the agenda.
Captain Niccolo, Daytona Beach Police Department, newly assigned captain for District 2. Give you the most recent CompStat numbers. All right, for District 2, this isn't since the last 2-week reporting period. We are trending downward in most categories, which is really great to see. Expect to continue seeing that trend downwards as the year continues on, and a lot of our crowds, we're around the summertime, so now that Labor Day has passed, we expect those crowds to dwindle. Also expect the numbers to continue to keep going down. Auto thefts are down by 20%. Total burglaries have had no change at 0%, but that is a decline from the last reporting period, which were at 6%, so we are trending downwards in that. The residential burglaries are up by 11%, but that's a decrease from last period at 22%. Non-residential burglaries are at negative 21%. Total larcenies down negative 5%. Car breaks are down negative 9%. Total robberies are down by 14%, which is a decline from last period of 16%. The ag assault and batteries are up by 101%, but in the last about 6-7 weeks since I've been promoted, I've noticed that number has declined. It started somewhere in the range of 160, 170. So we've been doing a lot of work on that range there. The 2-year average for that is 24%. The sexual batteries are down by 78%. Total Part 1 crimes are up by 10%, but that is a decline from the last period where they were up by 14%. And over the 2-year period, total Part 1 crimes are down by 25%. Calls for service down by 7%. And that's basically the gist of it. Do you all have any questions?
Okay. All right, I just want to make one. Over at the boardwalk, we have been noticing some aggressive homeless people over there. I mean,
Sure.
it is, and they're like cursing up a storm, and it's like, it's going to end up chasing away families and everything like that. But,
Yeah, and that's something that we sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. Go ahead.
Okay.
That's something that we recognize and that we've been working towards. This past weekend, we had an operation where we rented out a couple of hotel rooms. One was for burglary suppression, but also was to specifically watch the boardwalk. This was right at the Hilton, and we watched the boardwalk we had the rooms for almost 2 straight days. So that's something that we did. We've got officers out there that are on bicycles, that they're on foot, and they're trying to address it as best as they can. Can't catch everybody. But over the last about 7 days, I'll throw you some addresses where we've made multiple arrests. 11 South Ocean, 35 South Atlantic, 100 University, 5 and 600 block of North Grandview, 100 block of North A1A, 1200 block of North A1A, 601 Earl Street, 18 South Oleander, Boardwalk, Bandshell, Breakers Park, 415 North Halifax, 105 North Peninsula, and 800 Ora Street. So we target not only the Boardwalk, the Bandshell, and the Breakers Park, but also where they kind of bleed over into the neighborhoods for neighborhood intrusion.
And can we do anything about the beach, because they're starting to camp underneath the Main Street Pier?
Again.
I mean, I know.
Well, most of the beach is patrolled by Volusia County Beach Patrol,
Yeah.
but if there's a specific spot under the stairs or something that we could look at and go down and see
Actually,
what's going
Teresa,
on.
isn't that underneath the actual pier? Isn't that part of the Daytona Beach? Don't we own? Doesn't the city own the pier and directly under the pier?
I know. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
When I conveyed what I conveyed, they did.
It
But
does.
I'm not sure who has responsibility for
But the city owns the property directly under the pier.
real estate.
And if they're camping,
Yes, the land.
they're camping under the pier. They're camping on city-owned property, right?
Yeah, if you're talking about under the pier, so there's that stairwell that comes down, which is a constant problem. That's what I thought you were referring to.
No,
You're saying
they're
actually camping
under the pier.
like on the beach,
Under
under the
the
pier.
pier.
Okay, yeah, that's something that we can look at. Absolutely, yes, sir.
Okay, all right. Okay. All right, well, thank you very much. Anybody have any questions?
I appreciate your time. Thank you.
All right, now we're going to go to item 4, Peabody Historical Overlay Rezoning.
Good evening. This is my first time up here before the board. My name's Stephen Bapp. I'm a certified planner for the city. I've worked for the city for about 18 months. I've been the historical planner for about 9 months.
And your name again was?
My name is Stephen Bapp, B-A-P-P.
Welcome.
Thank you. Thank you very much. It's an honor to be here.
And Reed hasn't chased you off yet.
Almost. We get fisticuffs a little bit, but we're good to go now. So this, what this is a historical overlay map amendment, and what this will do, simply put, is going to give a local historic designation to the Peabody Auditorium. A part of the process is for the historic board to give a recommendation, for the planning board to give a recommendation, and then if a property falls within a redevelopment zone, then that appropriate redevelopment board would give the recommendation. In this case, it falls in the Main Street, formerly known as Main Street, but now it's called the Beachside Redevelopment. Okay, so this request is internally staff-driven. What we're trying to do, the reason we're trying to do this, other than give it a recognition it really deserves, is we're trying to leverage the ability to be higher priority for things like ECHO grants. A historical designation will give that to the building, and that's really going to give that little extra gold star when we put in our grant applications. And as time goes on, we believe grants will probably be more harder to get, so this is going to give us that advantage. This is the Peabody Auditorium up on the screen. You're all familiar with this. The statues in the front were done by Mr. Marsh, who was a world-renowned sculptor, and those are called the Four Muses. Okay, so the property itself is a very old site. It was probably built in about 1919 by Mr. Peabody, and what had happened, that building had burned down. So there was a rebuilding of the Peabody Auditorium at that site, and it was dedicated in 1949. You may ask, why hasn't this been put into the historic district before? Well, the reason why is when the initial survey was done of historic properties on the beachside, that property itself was about 45 years old. And the requirement is to be at least 50 years old to be a historic structure. So time went on. We didn't expand any districts. We didn't consider this site until this year specifically. Its location, it's on Auditorium Boulevard across from the large Ocean Center. I think you're all pretty familiar with its actual location. Right there. Here's where it shows the proximity to the national districts that you see on the map. The yellow is the Surfside National District, and the pink is the Seabreeze National District.
Which goes up to Auditorium Boulevard. Yes,
The one that goes up to Auditorium Boulevard is the Seabreeze
That's correct.
National District. Yeah.
Does it go on both sides of Auditorium Boulevard?
It does. It brackets both sides to the west, and then none of the county facility or the city facility auditorium were put into that district.
But Peabody, at one time, was considered part of the Seabreeze University
Yes.
National Register District, so it is on the National Register.
Our research has determined it's never been in a district because when the districts were done prior to 1999. That would be the 50-year mark that the Peabody was dedicated. It was evaluated. There was an evaluation done on the building. There's a lot of history built for it. It was considered a few times, but I think that action to include it kind of died on the vine.
Let me share with you just one little
All right.
historic fact. It was included in the survey done by our consultant from St. Augustine, but the city was very hesitant to extend the local recognition of that National Register District to Seabreeze, which kept that whole area from Seabreeze to Auditorium as part of the original federal national district, but not a local one. So I looked on the books when I got your packet, which is excellent, by the way. I went on the computer, and I found one map that showed both sides of Auditorium in the National Register District before it was Seabreeze University. That's the local designation.
Right.
But the Seabreeze has a national historic designation, goes from Auditorium all the way to University. So it might be, I know that Mr. Traeger asked about that. I don't know whether or not, I know it was individually recognized as an individual structure, not counting the lack of 5 years when it was reviewed, but I think that's still an open question, and I don't know whether even our colleagues in Tallahassee might be able to help us. We've included it as part of that National Register District several times in grants that benefited properties in that district.
That could be pulling out the Surfside, the actual one that's with the National Park Service. When you pull that, it does not have that building included in the
Well,
survey.
it doesn't insert, yeah, Surfside is.
Right. So it was probably, both Seabreeze and Surfside do not include it. But I know it was probably surveyed, but I don't know why it wasn't put in. That is a piece of evidence. I have no idea why.
Okay.
I think that was lost with time. What this district will not do, or excuse me, what this amendment will not do, it will not change the zoning. This zoning will remain the same. It will remain consistent with buildings that are surrounding it. So it's not going to get any additional or less portion of the base zoning. Is only an overlay. The future land use, as you see, will not change. And also, it still will remain within the redevelopment area. That will not change. Okay, so what we're required to do, according to our land development code, is look at 9 criteria. Looking at this, we feel this application as staff meets at least 5 of the criteria. It was in your packet, but I'll just go over them briefly. The first thing is, as you see here, as I stated earlier, the original auditorium was made in 1919. It was a very significant first cultural endeavor I think Daytona Beach had to this scale by Simon J. Peabody. There were some very famous bands that played there, including John Philip Sousa. As time went on, the building was destroyed by a very large fire. Some historians say it's the largest fire in Volusia County. I'm not sure if that's true to date. I think the DeLand fire of 1887 was probably a bit larger. But on the original site is very significant. Not only did John Peabody, or Simon J. Peabody, dedicate this site, he also dedicated a lot of local parks in the area, which had been very significant to that time period of our history. The second criteria is a list of significant national events that occurred there. This is a very non-inclusive list. Every time I present this to a board or a panel or senior staff, they say, well, I remember when such and such played, I didn't see that on the list, or this person. There are so many performers that have played there, I think we'd have to have about 6 slides to list them all. But here's just kind of a general overview. And that was also in your packet. Also, a site was readily identified as persons of significant contribution to the local community. Well, one person was Simon J. Peabody, who was one of the biggest industrialists in the early 1900s. It was his vision that brought the Peabody and brought this cultural aspect to the city. Also, the John Marsh statues in the front are very significant. He was very readily identifiable.
Frederick Dana Marsh.
Frederick Dana Marsh, I'm sorry. And then distinguished architectural site. It is a international architectural style, which came about post-World War II, was exported from Europe to the United States. And there are a lot of civic buildings of that time that were built there. Buildings today are not really built in this type of style, so we often look at our older buildings, but this is a more modern building, and it is a very significant style, and they are becoming less and less, so that is pretty important to try to give a designation to preserve this building. Also, this continues on and meets criteria 8, probably for about the same, for the same reasons. So that makes 5 out of the 9. Staff would recommend putting the historic overlay and designating it as a local historic site. On August 17th, the Historic Preservation Board voted 5-0 unanimously to approve this item or recommend approval for the City Commission. August 26th, the Planning Board again voted unanimously. It's actually 7-0, not 6-0. Apologize for that error. And in conclusion, a majority vote from you would be required to not move it forward, but a vote from you is required to move forward to the City Commission. And then with the all the recommending boards, the City Commission is anticipated to hear this on the 22nd of September for the first reading, and then for its adoption on October 6th.
Okay. All right, is there any questions?
So that concludes.
It's a very excellent report, very compelling report. It is a mid-century modern building, one of the very few in this part of Florida. And the interior was all done in cast terracotta. I'm not sure whether or not you have that fact or not, but if you go underneath the layers of paint, you'll see Francis Walton's terracotta. It was an acoustical auditorium designed without any sound amplification. It's quite a building.
Right. And Francis Walton was an architect, and he did design.
This city hall.
Right. Yeah. Right. The City Hall and many other municipal type buildings, schools throughout Volusia County. And he is in the Hall of Fame for architects too. So, yeah, thank you for that.
All right.
All right.
Teresa, anything?
Oh, interesting.
Okay. Robert?
I think it's terrific, and if the chair will entertain a motion, I'd like to move approval.
All right. Okay. I have a motion. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay. Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All opposed? You got a unanimous.
Bravo.
Thank you.
Okay. All right, so now we got item 5, redevelopment project updates.
Provided with you you should have in your packet the public works projects that are going on over in the Beachside. I still have not gotten into the Daytona Grand, so I'm looking forward to it when I get the chance, just have not. But that's an incredible building now that we hope we get the next project off the ground there with the condominiums and finish the job. I can tell you that in terms of other things that are going on out there, some of the projects that in 2007, 2008 came to a screeching halt with the recession starting to kick in, that is changing, where we're going to see some of these projects start coming back. They're not here yet, but the discussion, I think, is beginning with the investors that are looking at real projects and bringing them back. So hopefully this board will get to see some of that in the coming months. And that's my report.
All right. Okay, I guess we have public comments. Anybody who'd like this? I see John's. Oh, I got the papers there. He was staring you down, you know that? All right, well, it's John Nicholson.
John Nicholson, 413 North Granbury Avenue.
Hey, I can't hear you.
I don't control the mic.
It's for the record. You need to speak up.
Oh, it's on. Okay.
Okay. John Nicholson, 413 North Granbury Avenue. A couple of things. One, I've been at the Daytona Grand. It's fabulous. It just does not look like Daytona Beach. It's like when they built the Corbin building years ago. It didn't fit Main Street. This hotel does not fit Daytona Beach. It fits what will be Daytona Beach. If you're familiar with the Marriott Renaissance that's going in and the Hard Rock, that's the new Daytona Beach, especially at the north end. So you should go. Just take a walk, and it's really impressive to walk in, then have to walk upstairs, and then all the accoutrements. It's really interesting. Secondly, we do not own the land under the pier. We lease it. And we also lease another area for a second pier for 75 years,
Correct.
about 65 years left.
Okay, that's fine.
We own 2 acres, though, in front of the
But even
Breakers
if we
Park.
lease it, we have control of it, is my point.
Yes, we do. And there was a disagreement that they finally settled. It took them about 3 years to settle it between the police officers. But we have control, our police have control under the pier.
Yeah.
They've reached that agreement. We just don't do it. FDOT is planning on redoing several roads in the CRA area. ISB, Main Street, A1A. They're in the process of doing Oak Ridge as we speak, which is terrible. You ought to take a look at that. And then Seabreeze. One of the problems is that we control Oak Ridge, or we should, half of it at least. They're going down to 10-foot lanes at the end of it. And there's a bike lane going down, and it abruptly stops with a parkage right in the middle of it. So, and there's no way to get off to the right onto the sidewalk. You have to go into the 10-foot lane.
You have to get what?
You have to get into the 10-foot lane. Either that or you pick up your bike and walk it to the sidewalk over to the side to do it. It does not make any sense to me. The north end, which you don't have any control over, they are 3 and 4 foot wide sidewalks. They were supposed to widen the 5-foot sidewalks. They widened them to 41 inches, 42 inches, and 47 inches. So those things are coming up for the areas that are going to be in the Main Street CRA. One of the things coming up is parking on A1A, on the west side of A1A. Does not make sense to me to have parking on A1A. There's not enough room for 2 lanes to start with. There are several other things. They want to put where the landscaping is down the middle, take the landscaping out and put a bicycle lane, which is something that I think you might want to oppose. Third, there is the mayor, when he ran for office, put out a flyer of what he accomplished over the last 5 years, the money spent, and the things that he did. $40 million was spent in Midtown. About $30 million was spent in downtown, but he left out a couple other $1 million. So it's really about $70 million that has gone into downtown and then that will go into downtown. On the beach side, especially in the CRA area, you guys got a whopping $750,000. That's it. You are anticipating getting another $33 million when the bridge goes in. That's about it. And the bridge kind of is finished. So, and then you're expecting to get some money for ISB. Hopefully next year they're going to start to acquire property and then redo that. So that half of that funding is in the CRA. So you are drastically underfunded from the city. You've got to realize that we still, and I understand, you remember Charles Cherry and Rick Shriver, that there's no more tourism in Daytona Beach. We don't have any more tourists left. Well, that's their view. My view is we still have tourism, and it's very valuable. Part of the reason the tourists come here is the appearance of the city the appearance of our beach, et cetera. It is to our advantage to make sure that we get our fair share of funding. And I know I've complained and Reed doesn't allow you all to talk about it, but you have about a $5 million amount coming from the TIF funds, not TIF funds, CRA funds. And you are supposed to get 2.4 million in bonds that you have to pay off. And so you have about $2.6 million left to spend in your area, and you get about 56,000 to spend.
What area are you talking about?
CRA.
We're two areas, two redevelopment areas. Which one?
Main Street CRA.
Okay.
Yeah, there's no way possible that the Atlantic CRA is going to get $5 million in funds. They're just not there yet. They're almost at a negative. So at this particular time, since we're not getting any funds from the city, your CRA funds are terribly important for that area, especially with the Daytona Grand going in. We have to make that area look attractive, and we're not doing that. So I'm asking you to look carefully at the things that are coming down the pike from FDOT so that we don't get shafted, and that more funds be extended to the care and upkeep of the CRA area. Thank you.
All right, well, nobody else would like to speak? All right, then we're going to move on to board comments. I guess I'll start to my left with Teresa. No? Okay. Well, we want to go with Robert, and then we'll end it with,
I don't have any comments for today.
okay.
I've got just a very few things, and if you will
We said
indulge
the-
me, I would appreciate it very much, Mr. Chairman. At our review of the Duva-Fauco project, I was very insistent that the grant application was incomplete because it lacked a landscape element. Did that project, under its designated number, require a landscape, or it has to have a landscape project, but is that a required part of submission to us? I might have been in error.
Yeah, there is a landscape and a site plan. One thing I could do that might be interested in is provide that plan the next time we're
That would be
getting
terrific.
together.
So it was required. Why did we miss knowing that the application was incomplete? We never move incomplete applications forward. But we did on that one, I think probably because Dr. Duva was willing to testify in a very accurate way about the kind of landscaping he envisioned for that property. But he failed to discuss the sidewalk and whether there would be traffic cuts from International onto his property through the sidewalk. There is not now, but there might be. And it looked to me from the chart that we got that he envisions going through the sidewalk on the north side of International Speedway Boulevard in order to access the restaurant section of the property. Let me share with you why it concerned me, just very briefly. For any of you who drive down A1A and you drive in front of the Adams Mark, which is now the Hilton, you'll realize that there is a large section of sidewalk that is less than 3 feet wide, where people are forced to walk single file along the whole length of that. Now, that anomaly was the result of a previous advisory board moving forward when Mr. McGrath brought that project to us in an incomplete fashion. And before the city realized what had happened, all of the cement had been poured, and the public was stolen, not only the setbacks on that building, but the actual sidewalk. I remember going to see Stokely Carmichael with Jimmy Huger, and I picked him up and we had the concierge, and he had to hold on to the back of my belt as we walked single file on that very tiny sidewalk as cars were going by doing 30 miles an hour. That memory is one of the things that came to mind when I saw the incomplete application.
And by the way, Gary, you'll be interested to know that it wasn't just stolen on the west side. It was stolen on the east side too, because the side entrance to the Joyland used
I'm
to
talking
be.
about the east side of A1A.
Yeah, okay, because the side entrance to the Joyland used to be straight across. Now it.
Yeah.
Got it?
Also, I continue to be confused, Reed, with the process that you have laid out in our minutes that you feel this board is required to use to get information, including a recommendation to the City Commission acting as the Community Redevelopment Agency. And again, I reviewed the minutes, and you feel that this board has to move its recommendation, even a motion that passes, to you, and that you will then take it to our city manager, and then it moves from the city manager to the City Commission. I don't think that's accurate. Asked a couple of people who should know, and they don't think it's accurate. So I went to and got copies for everybody. I went and got copies of the Land Development Code, and it has a very complete description of the authorities of this board, including the plans, the major plans that are on the table and have not been forgotten about. They are very active, and this board is the only board that can move those plans forward to the City Commission. So I'd like to know, what is the process that would allow us to, for example, recommend to the City Commission acting as a community redevelopment agency that we'd like to do wayfaring or signage in the redevelopment areas. No one, and I'll tell you, the Land Development Code doesn't show the process involving the city manager, and I'll tell you why, Reed. When I served on the Florida Arts Council and was involved in a lot of state politics and know a lot about charter government, and it's just anathema to charter government. Your suggestion of a process is anathema to the spirit of charter government, that the manager would be involved in a presentation to the City Commission. I was chairman of economic development for 4 years and made the presentation with members of my board for the 10-year community plan that won an award from the state of Florida. And Suzanne Kewen didn't make the presentation, and she didn't share it with our city manager. Now, unless there's something new that I don't know about and other friends of mine who are involved in city government don't know about, I'd like to see it, because I think it will affect how we can move forward as a board. Also, the minutes reflected some information about the redevelopment plans, and Ms. Attorney and I had a brief discussion before the meeting, and she shares with me that there will be a workshop that will include, I guess, from Bob Jager, who's the city attorney, who I spoke to in your presence, who admitted that the redevelopment plans are not off the table. They still are very much active in this board, and that we can move forward. But it's how we move forward, Reed, that I'm concerned with, because I don't think your path is either legal or reflected in any documents I could find on the city website. And I spent 2 days looking at them. Now, maybe it's an internal department policy, but it certainly isn't one that our city commission knows about or accepts. So I'd like some clarity on that, because it really does affect, I think, the kinds of things we can do as a board and the way that we do them. The biggest bone I choose to pick with the staff is our agenda format. Our agenda format is the only agenda format of any redevelopment agency that does not contain new business or old business. It is like a primitive vestige of an agenda format. Now, this board gets to set what kind of an agenda format we want. Not the staff, the board. It's one of the shall items listed on the, would you like a copy? I make
Well,
a copy.
Gary, you know what I was thinking is, why don't you get, I mean, because whatever opinion.
Let me share with you why I'm going to cut you off, because I tried to contact Reed.
No,
Several
that's not
times.
what I was going to say.
Oh, okay.
Okay. What I was going to say, because obviously the city attorney is, he doesn't create policy for the city, and it would be more of the lines of the deputy city manager. So why don't you get together with Jim Morris, who is, you know, by far the person that oversees this board, among other things, you know, and see what, you know, give him the list, see what he thinks, and then, you know, and we go from there.
Well, the only policy in this city can be made by the city commission. It can't be made by Jim Morris or by our city manager.
I'm not saying Jim Morris or the city manager makes policy. They implement the policy, and in their opinion, they're going to be implementing the policy that they see fit. And so what I'm suggesting to you is you just get together with him and see whether or not.
I'll be more than happy to get together with another city official. It's becoming a full-time job for me, and I enjoy doing it, and I did it for years. Let me share with you that these are very critical issues because, as a member of the public said, there will be dollars that are coming into, that will be flowing into the Main Street redevelopment area, and in time into South Atlantic. And the E-zone, to me, Reed, would be one of the great justifications for doing to Peabody what we want to do is the E-zone and the Main Street plan that back up that. As a matter of fact, I don't know how you could be even spending money on the auditorium if you didn't use the Main Street plan and the E-zone as the fulcrum to make it happen. So these are just some of the concerns that I have had, and I think we're going to straighten out. Bob Jager gave me, and I'm glad you were there, and I requested that you be there, a pretty complete review of our access, which we have, to the Main Street, South Atlantic, and the E-zone plan as a reason for our doing business and spending some of the income that comes into, specifically into Main Street for Main Street facilities and South Atlantic for South Atlantic. So, Reed, if you wouldn't mind helping clear up my it's an oxymoron. I'm trying to resolve these two, how the Land Development Code spells out who we are and how we do business, and how you and our city attorney have interpreted that, because I could not find justification from it from either our city attorney or from officials in the city.
All right.
And that's my comment.
All right, and we're down, and I'll be real brief.
And I will say that maybe I need to make a motion and ask for a second that someone redo our agenda format so that we have access, members of this board have access other than our comments at the end of the meeting, so that we may do business and come up with some really good, there are some great things that we could do for very few dollars in a redevelopment area that has substantial income coming in. So maybe I should move that we ask the staff to redo our agenda format so that it reflects professional standards that every other board on the city uses, and I have copies of their agendas that all have at least new business and old business and other access points for members of the advisory board. Also, I think the process by which we move information forward, Reed, is critical. And if you could get some clarification for me, I would deeply appreciate that, because I just can't imagine that anyone would build in the referral to the manager when we have an elected city government. We've never done that. It's never happened on any of the advisory boards I sat on, and I've sat on them, that did some major things for the city, and they never went through the city manager's office. So if it's a new rule that the city commission has passed, I'm more than happy to accept it. But if the city commission hasn't passed it and doesn't know about it, then I think we might have some problems using it.
Before you make that motion, Kyra, I don't believe according to Robert's Rules of Order, we could randomly make motions without staff recommendations or,
Oh, yes.
When it's on clarification of our actions as a board, I believe we wholeheartedly can.
Oh, yeah, we can.
on the format of how we're going to run our meetings.
It would fall under general powers and duties to adopt rules governing its proceedings. So to me, that would be where your agenda would come in, because that's kind of governing how you're going to proceed. So my suggestion is that if you have a specific format, that you come next meeting with the format that you want.
I have it with me. It's the format that our colleagues in Midtown are using, that passed, that already went through review by the city and by the city commission, and I'll be more than happy to give you and Reed copies of it.
And if that's the one that if for the rest of the board members to know what it is. that you're-
Absolutely.
My question would be would we need to review that now and make a decision now?
That would be up to the board. You can look at it now and decide, or you can bring it back at the next meeting.
Okay.
Well, I'm definitely going to ask for board comments, and my comment's going to be, I think that we should wait until we have more information, but that's up to you guys.
Well, I don't know what more information you need. All I'm asking is that we have an old business, new business. A member of the public at our last meeting suggested we list the members of this board on our agenda item, which is standard with every other advisory board in the city except this one. There are just some primitive qualities to our agenda document, and since it's our responsibility to establish an agenda document, let's be professional.
So your motion is specific to adding old business and new business to the agenda?
Yeah, that, I would settle for that. I would actually settle for that, although the Midtown Board has a much more sophisticated, much more elaborate agenda. I would be very happy with I think with old business and new business, we could get some things done, especially if we straighten out whether or not we have a circuitous path through the manager's office in order to move items forward to the Community Redevelopment Agency. So that's the second thing we need to clear up.
I agree with Dino's remarks.
Yeah, I think, but anyways, make the motion. I can't stop you from making a motion.
Well, I mean, I think if you'd like to wait, what are we waiting for? Other members of the board?
No, I think it would be more appropriate that you have a meeting with whether it's Reed or Jim Morris or whoever, work it out, and then at the next meeting that we have, you guys have a recommendation that you guys worked out.
Reed, do you have a problem with old business and new business being added onto our agenda?
No, I do not have a problem with that format. And again, like you said, the Midtown Board has already gone through an effort to try to do that. I think the part that I'm going to get an answer for you on, these questions you've been asking, that's relevant to what's in old or new business, is going to be going back to, well, what can this board do in terms of process, and who are they conveying what to? This is the days before 2015, when the Land Development Code was changed, is made it different in that there's specific items that this board reviews. It's not a open advisory to just have those comments, but you're free to do so. And make your comments in the record, and in terms of the process right now, I report directly to the city manager. There's been some restructuring at City Hall. I report directly to the city manager, and I no longer am reporting to Development Services at this time.
I feel very strongly that just about everything we should that we do should be made aware to the city manager. I mean,
Yeah,
I'm not trying to keep information from the manager, I never have.
Yeah.
But it's whether or not our chairman or a committee of this board presents to the city commission as Midtown did. As Midtown did. And we work that way because I know how charter government operates. You should too, Reed. You've been here an awful long time. And this circuitous move to the right is very counter to the spirit of charter government, very counter to the way we've ever done business in this city. And I'm not going to lay it on anybody's desk, but it just sort of came out of the blue. I remember you saying it, and then it was reflected in our minutes. And I think we really need some clarification on that because I disagree, as I did on the development board, the development documents being off the table. They're on the table. You heard Mr. Jager.
Right. I don't think anybody said that they were off the table, that they weren't to be used by the city for its development. I don't.
By this board, this is the appropriate board to use, though. What other board would be using the Main Street redevelopment
The CRA
plan?
itself.
Well, yes, but the CRA has appointed us to recommend to them elements to be discussed and to pass on.
And that's where the code has changed. This board no longer has that responsibility laid out in the land development code.
I got this land development code today. It is the current one posted on the internet of the city. So if you have something else to add to it, I think there's a real problem in bookkeeping.
I would like to see what you have because, and I'm
But
not.
wait a minute, I don't think this,
'Cause I
make
have
your
different
motion and let's move on.
Well, I mean, again, I can see a split, a split vote coming where we're shy a full contingent, but if Reed's concurrence isn't good enough for you, you want to go to Mr. Morris, I'd be happy to do that. We
Yeah,
keep
I'm just
putting
saying-
off and putting off. Let me share you with something. We were chastised for not having a meeting at our last time, so we could have moved on the Peabody thing. We had business to do. It was legitimate business of this board, and that meeting was canceled. And that shouldn't ever happen again.
We actually contemplated having an emergency meeting, but it was determined that we could have the meeting today and it would not stall anything. So I was.
It didn't stall anything, but would you like to read the minutes of the Historic Preservation Advisory Board? They wondered why it did not come to us. It didn't come to us because we canceled our meeting.
We decided to have a meeting every 2 months. But anyways,
I'm fine with we haven't had a meeting every 2 months. We've canceled.
no, we haven't. We've ever since we decided to have a meeting at least once every 2 months, we have had a meeting once every 2 months. Now, the last one we didn't have quorum, but that's a whole other story. We had an advertised meeting and we all showed
So we
up.
are meeting according to our advertised schedule every 2 months?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, now, it's my suggestion that you work this out with, whether it's Reed Berger or with
Well,
Jim Morris.
Reed is willing to go with an old business, new business, and we could build on that, but I think that's the absolute minimum. We have to have access, not on our comments at the end of the meeting, but as part of the body of the meeting, not our comments.
Well, before I change any format, I will be checking in with the city manager, as I did with Midtown.
Yeah.
And so just remember that it doesn't mean it's automatic and then I'm going to change anything. So there's, as the chair is saying, we need to have some discussion with both
Yeah.
legal and the city manager.
Which is my suggestion. I actually don't mind. I don't even think we have to have a vote. I think you could go to the city manager or to the deputy city manager, talk about it, see whether or not we should, the format or what have you, and bring it to our board. I don't think it needs to be a vote of us. You
No,
know,
it has to be a vote of us. It's what the Land Development Code says. It's one of our the things we shall do.
if it's in the land development code, then it's automatic.
But it's what it says is have the following powers. It doesn't say you shall do have an agenda, but it's you have the power to adopt your rules of procedure. To me, your agenda would go towards your rules
Okay.
of
Well, that's
governing
what a
its
rule of
proceedings.
procedure is.
Right.
Okay, so, all right, well then, all right, so you want to add old business and new business?
Absolutely. And Reed sees the reason why. It'd be silly not to. I mean, our agenda, when you compare it to the Midtown agenda, is a no business
Okay.
agenda. Theirs is a pro-business agenda.
Go ahead and make the motion to add old business and new business.
I would move that we add to our agenda format, the skeleton, on old business and new business categories using the format from Midtown as a template.
Okay, is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay. All in favor signify by saying, I would say roll call, but I don't think this is that divisive, so all in favor signify by saying aye.
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 All
Aye.
opposed? Okay, all right,
Thank you.
no problem. Now, I guess it's my turn. We're down to the last two concerts at the band show. Hopefully you guys will come and enjoy them, okay? And as of that, I'll call the meeting. Oh, did you want, well, you've already passed the board comments, but
I wish we
I know, I see you there, Rick, don't worry, you know? I've even learned your name, okay?